just in case you're joining us, we're just waiting a few moments before we kick off at around 12 o'clock. So welcome if you've joined us, and thank you for joining Work-Life Balance, hosted by IPAF, part of their Women Empowered Access webinar series. We'll be doing some introductions very shortly, so just bear with us, grab a cuppa, and we're going to start in just a couple of minutes. If you've just joined us, we're just waiting another moment or so before we launch our Work-Life Balance webinar hosted by IPAF. So we've got some wonderful guests lined up for you. We've got a Q&A session. We're going to be diving into what it means in the modern world for women with the concept of work-life balance. I'll be introducing everybody, and we'll be launching in about a minute. So welcome if you have just joined us. Welcome, everybody. We're just waiting for people to jump on. Just waiting for a couple more people. There's a lovely group I can see. We've got over 20 people, plus our speakers and teams here, all looking forward to talking about work-life balance. So we're just going to be going shortly in just a moment or so. So get yourself comfortable, get settled, and I will be kicking things off in just a moment. Well, the numbers are just whizzing up. They're whizzing up. So I want to just make sure we capture everybody who wants to join us as part of this webinar series. I don't want anybody to miss out on the fantastic conversation that we're going to be launching. So I think we're going to make a start, and conscious of people's time. So if I can ask to take over the screen share, then we will launch our webinar, Work-Life Balance. So just give us one moment to sort that out. And good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for that as we sort out the technical things that we need to do in the background. My name is Ali Moore, and I am your host for today's webinar. And it's hosted by the fabulous IPAF, and we are doing a series with their Women Empowered Access team. We've got lots and lots of people joining us from all over the globe. We've got a Facebook group that you can get involved in the chat on. And today we want to be talking about the concept of work-life balance. So I know that this is something that for many of you comes up, you know, really as what does this mean? You know, how do we how do we balance work and life? So what we're going to do today, I'm going to kick the proceedings off and share some slides with you, just to give you a bit of background, some research, some statistics about that. And then I'm going to introduce our fabulous panelists. We've got three amazing women here who are going to share their experiences of work-life balance, and they come from lots of different backgrounds. So welcome to Work-Life Balance. My name is Ali Moore. And I am a relationship therapist, and I'm interested in how people interact in the world and how they interact in their situations and with each other. And I've been doing some work with IPAF around their women empowered access. How do we bring more women into the powered access world? But generally, how do we support women in the world of work and career and life in general? This is something that I'm really interested in. So what do we mean, by this kind of concept of work-life balance? So when we think of work-life balance normally, I guess the first thing that comes to my mind, and when I kind of went out and did a little bit of a bit of a recce with my colleagues and my friends. Initially, they thought of these two separate worlds: the work and the life, the career and the home. And alongside that, also a lot of assumption that this was about parenting and non-parenting, and how we balance that. But I really feel that this concept of work-life balance, especially since COVID, has become really integrated. We are leading a whole different way of work and life. For lots of people now, they are working from their home environment, or maybe they were and they've been asked to go back into the work environment, and that's causing tensions. We have a lot more choices open to us as women in terms of careers. I, for one, myself run my own business, so there's a real crossover between my work life and my home life, and like, are they even separate, for me? And I have to think about this. How do I actually think about this concept? We also know that for many women, it isn't about balancing parenting at all, because they don't have children. So we want to make it very clear that we're looking at a balance here for you. This isn't just aimed at women who are parenting. This is aimed at women and the work-life balance. There's lots of statistics and research that shows that women in general can still feel under pressure to show that they're capable, to overperform, to put more hours in. They're still trying to almost compete, especially when they're in roles that have previously been seen as predominantly a male area. And I know that, the powered access world can sometimes feel as though it's one of those, even though we have many amazing women working in all different roles across the board. So I'm really interested to hear my panel's views in a few moments on what it means to have work-life balance in this modern world for the modern woman. Okay, looking at it from all different aspects, and not all of our panelists are parents as well. So we really want to get that balance for you. So don't feel that it isn't relevant, because I think this is hugely relevant to women throughout. So this is kind of a vision I get when I think about, how we work through life. And I found myself for a long time using this word, the juggle. I'm juggling everything. I'm juggling the school run. I'm juggling the business. I'm juggling the extra responsibilities. I'm juggling the house. I'm juggling me and, and my wellness and my tasks. And so I run my own business. Between us, we have 5 children. They're all of different ages, lots of other responsibilities. My husband runs his own business as well. And I started to feel as though talking about me juggling was actually being a bit disrespectful to it, because I feel that juggling makes it sound as though as women, we are just getting ready to drop the balls. Yeah, it's like we're holding it all up in the air and we're hoping and praying that it all stays up there. And it's not a medal of honor that I really wanted to have. So I now think of it more as a choice. I choose to have a number of different roles that I have in life. I choose to have a number of different tasks that I want to take part in. I choose to have different responsibilities. And I now look at it almost as project management. Project management is I'm on top of this, I'm in control of this, I'm making choice. And juggling for me feels very, very different. It feels as though, as I say, it's just accidentally waiting for things to drop. So I'm also very interested in hearing from the panel, and please feel free to share your Q&As as well, and we will be looking at those later in the webinar about how you perceive the management of your life. Is it a balance? Is it not? Do you juggle? What do you think about that phrase of juggling and having it all up in the air? And is that different for you? But before we kind of do that, I really wanted to dive into some stats. So I've got a couple of comments here, but I've got some other stats to share with you. So the Harvard Business News do a lot of research, and they are saying that women still feel pressure to achieve more and do more hours because we are socially educated to say yes. So there's this whole piece around gender upbringing and how women are brought up, where for many women, there is still this view that we need to people please, we need to conform. And I don't want this to be sort of a raging feminist, man bashing session at all. But the fact is that there are still differences in a lot of upbringings, and this socially educated to please, to be of service, to do the right thing, means that they want to sort of show that's that they're good at that's what they that's what they're able to do. So they will put more hours in, and they will take on tasks that perhaps other colleagues might turn around and say, no, I'm not going to do that, and feel okay about that. Saying no is still quite difficult for lots of women in lots of arenas and cultures. Also, negative gender stereotyping. So this is that's kind of a research word, but it's this fear of being seen as less capable. It's this fear that you will be judged as not able to deal with that you might break under pressure, that you might become emotional, that you might not be able to deal with tough conversations, or that if you do that, then you might be seen negatively. You might be seen as hard or harsh or too tough. But also being seen as well when you have parental responsibilities, to bring that in, seen as more of an attrition risk. So if you have a family, will you then look to reduce your hours? Will you look to want to do less? Will you be somebody who actually leaves the business? And whereas lots of businesses are getting better at this, and that we have flexible working, and when I started out, in industry, many years ago, we didn't have things like that. There is almost still this looking at it. The business worries you're going to be an attrition risk because of your family arrangements, instead of saying, how can I help you stay and get that really good capability and skills from you, and work around your needs as a human being in terms of your other responsibilities. So I think there's still that going on. Some other statistics that I just wanted to share with you is that men and women in corporate roles, they do actually tend to do on average the same amount of hours, but due to gender pay gap, women still get paid 10 hours less a week than their male counterparts. 64% of women in the UK are still the primary carers. Now, that could be parental, or it could be generational. They might be looking after relatives, and people who are less abled. So, but 64% of those are female. So that impacts the extra responsibility and the extra pressure on what they do in their world, and they are more likely also to want to choose to do that. So again, we shouldn't feel this is being foisted on, but in a lot of times this is a role that women want to take on, but there still doesn't seem to be the equity around how we actually deal with that. And the other piece is that there is a lot more pressure on women generally to have a fulfilled life. So, you know, you need to be able to have the job or the career or be amazing in the home. And it's, you know, your wellness can feel very pressured as well. Are you doing the yoga? Are you eating well? Are you looking great? You know, there's a whole piece still around image. So the work-life balance for me is not just about how you manage your working hours with your home life. It has become integrated, it has become complex. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to introduce our amazing panelists. Just bear with us, as I say, as we move everything through, keep the technology moving. Here we go. So welcome to our fabulous panelists. If they can see me and they're live, give me a wave so I know that you're there. There you go. Fabulous. So let's go around and introduce. So we have Marta. If Marta gives us a wave, Marta is joining us from Italy. She is the Italian rep for IPAF, and she travels around the country recruiting individuals and companies to the IPAF organization, but she also owns her own image consultancy company. So she knows what it's like to balance different sets of responsibilities. We welcome Caroline Woodward, Director of Marketing and Communications at CMC Lift UK, and she has been the director there since 2022. She's one of 3 company directors running the UK branch of Italian manufacturer CMC Lift. She also brings a host of previous experience in the world of education. So welcome, Caroline. And we had a great initial chat before about some of the pressures of why people are leaving different industries as well. So I'm sure that's going to come up. And we welcome Pam. So Pam has been in the powered access industry since 1990, and she has had a host of roles, too many to actually list out, but on both sides of the industry divide in manufacturing and rental. And she now works for Vertical Press, and one of her roles is as organizer of Vertical Days events. So welcome to the panel, Pam, and welcome Caroline, and welcome Marta. I want to open up the Q&A, and we've kind of thought of some questions that will get debate. So what I'd like you to do, if you're listening, is if it sparks a thought, if it sparks a question, please pop that into the Q&A, and we will make sure that we take those comments and we work through those. And I'm just going to work through my screen, and I'm going to start with, I think I'm going to pick on Caroline first, but I'm going to give everyone a chance to answer. So Caroline, tell us your experience of managing work-life balance, and how do you manage this, and what's your view on this work-life balance?
Okay, well, I mean, let's face it, it's trying to establish a work-life balance is really hard. And at times, the emotional load of it all is really overwhelming. I was previously a teacher, and I regularly worked over 60-hour weeks, both in the classroom and then at home in the evenings, planning and marking, and at the weekends. And, you know, I used to arrive at school and literally make a litre of strong black coffee and put it in a thermos. And then knowing that for the next 6 hours, that was going to be the only thing that I could drink. And also I wasn't going to be able to get anything proper to eat or go to the loo. So it was full on pretty much all the time for 22 years. So obviously that impacted my work-life balance significantly, to the point where, you know, I felt tired all the time. You know, I was lurching from one illness to the next. I was just living for the holidays, and obviously eventually I just burnt out in the end. It's really, really full on. So I really try now to carve time for myself. I think that's really, really important for anybody, whether you're a parent or not. And you know, sort of trying to limit the amount of time that you do spend working in the evenings. I know it's really hard now, working, you know, in our own business with my husband and the other director, Pete. It's much easier because I'm able to plan my own day. So around my family, like working from home is much more achievable. And, you know, to be able to establish that kind of work-life balance, I feel that we're in a better situation now, even though I'm probably working as hard. It's not as full on. It is hard at times, but it's not as constantly full on. And I feel like I'm being able to establish a little bit of a better work-life balance, really.
Perfect.
Sometimes.
I mean, gosh, that's a lot, right? When you were talking about your prior role. And so it's great to hear that you've managed to do that. But I like that, carving out time for yourself. And I'm sure we're gonna touch on that. I want to come to Pam and get her view on this concept of work-life balance. Oh, just on mute, Pam.
There you go. Thank you. I don't have children. So I've only really had myself to think about. And because of that, my work has been a continuous flow. I've never not worked realistically since I was 16. And when I was younger, I would be at work all the time. And obviously when I started, it was a very different world to the one that we've got now. You didn't even have a mobile phone, never mind a smartphone. But I was very competitive when I was younger. So I entered a company that was a real innovator in the industry. And if you want to be that pioneer innovator, then you're always on it. And you're always looking around at the industry, what's happening, what are the trends. And I was very lucky, actually, because I was with a company that absolutely absorbed all of the new ideas of the industry. Just for instance, in terms of powered access, when I joined the industry, in the whole country, it was hundreds of machines, not thousands. So it was completely different, but it was exciting because you wanted to be the first person to do everything, bring out this new type of product. That it wasn't at that time, it wasn't a copycat scenario where everyone's now got a very similar machine to someone else. It's just branded differently. And that was really exciting. So I loved it. So I probably, if I'm honest, I didn't have any work-life balance at all in my 20s and 30s because I just threw myself into work and I loved it. One of the things that I've always done, even since I was young, is always made my weekends matter. So I think realistically during the week, you worked to do whatever project you needed to do. Certainly if we were doing product launches, you just had to carry on working until you got the job done. Weekends, if I could, and I wasn't traveling, I absolutely kept them for myself. And I had a very active lifestyle in terms of hiking and skiing and all that kind of thing. So that was a great opposite to being in the office, sitting, at meetings, at computers or, whatever. So I have to say, I totally enjoyed the early part. I never used to look at the work-life balance and think I've got a problem here because I was enjoying it too much and I was full of energy. And I think probably for me, one of the things about work-life balance, whichever question you look at and whoever answers the question, it's all about the people that you work with. Every single time it comes down to people. Because if you're working with a great bunch of people, you're going to enjoy most of the things that you do. And when you have a problem that you have to address, if you've got a great team, you never feel total responsibility for anything. You can share it. So I don't know whether that answers the question. In terms of experience of managing, I've built an office in the garden, which I love. And so I do close the door. Yeah. Even though I work at home all of the time, apart from traveling, I absolutely close the door. And I think that's really important.
I think there's a good for you. I think it's lovely to hear positive stories as well, because these webinars are not about sort of, they're about everything that's wrong. I think there are some really lovely positive stories of how people manage. I'm going to come back to one of the things you said about, needing to kind of put the hours in and the pioneer. And I'm going to look at that a little bit differently and see if there is a link to sort of how women feel about that. But I love, all the comments there, and everyone's lived experience is different. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to come to Martha now and get a view on this. and then we're going to dive into some more specific questions. But Marta, you are, as I say, project managing, not juggling. You are project managing a lot with your 2 roles. And I know that you're also a parent as well. So what does work-life balance mean to you?
Oh, you know, sometimes you, as you mentioned, you juggle. Sometimes you manage everything. It's like sometimes it's not like, it's like having a short blanket that you cannot cover everything, but sometimes you can manage everything well. So it depends on the period, I think. But I'm very lucky because when I started working for IPAF, I was only 24, and I used to travel all day long, to work all day long, you know. But when I became mom, I was 32, and I asked IPAF to work only half time. And they immediately said yes. And I always work from home, and it's been always very easier to manage everything, to manage my commitments and so on. And I'm very lucky also because I have a line manager who is Maurizio, who is a fantastic person. And it's very easy to work with him because he knows that sometimes when I had my kids who were younger, and they got sick and so on, and he completely understood. And so we tried to find solution together to face difficulties and so on. Sometimes it's been a roller coaster, you know, but I always tried to do my best, because now it's 15 years that I stay with IPAF, and so there is a good relationship with my company, because they know that in the period that we are facing a lot of commitments, I do all my best, and sometimes I work at night. It's not a problem. But I also know that, for example, in summer, in July, if I want to go to the seaside to stay with my kids, I can work at the seaside with them, and working from the seaside with them. So I feel that I'm very lucky.
So I think it's great to hear some positive stories again of how companies are doing that. I want to come back to this concept of, you know, research saying that regardless of external responsibilities, women feel that they need to show that they're more committed and more capable, you know, in order to be seen in a serious manner. And I just wanted to throw that open. So, you know, hands up, have you had that feeling or that experience, or has it been for you, you know, regardless of gender? I'm really interested in that. Pam.
I've never felt that.
Okay.
I don't know if it's because I've been lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I've never worried about, I've had lots of other types of stress, but I've never felt like I've never been good enough unless I try harder than somebody else.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly individual.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it goes back to who you're working with and for,
Mm-hmm.
how they really view you. And I think you know that pretty quickly when you start somewhere. I think culture in a company for me is absolutely important. I've been lucky. I think I've been lucky, but I've never felt like. I mean, I've been competitive. I don't know if that's the same thing, but I have definitely been competitive in the past, where I've worked in a company which has predominantly been, you know, a management team of guys, and there's been me and maybe one other woman, you know, and I've thought, well, absolutely, yeah, there's no way we're going to be viewed any differently to you guys. So I don't know whether that's the same thing, but I've never felt uncomfortable.
So you've been competitive, but as an individual, it's not been because you feel like you need to compete against them because you are the female voice. It's been just that you just enjoying that competitive nature of being in that team.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else? Marta?
Yes, I had the same experience, I have to say, because you know that in Italy there is a team of 4. I'm the only woman, and when I join, for example, our committees and the council, I am the only woman, and I never felt uncomfortable, never. And to be honest, I've been lucky to work with a great man. And when I have to say something, I can say whatever I want, because I don't feel uncomfortable about speaking. And yes, I feel that I manage everything as an individual, as you said, not as a woman. I don't care about it, absolutely. And I've been lucky, I have to say. Yes, you know that our sector, mainly in Italy also, but also I see also in the other countries, men are a lot more than women. But the women I met, they are great women, absolutely. And but also the men I've been able to meet, and they're absolutely good men. So I've been very lucky.
So, Caroline, I'm going to come to you in a moment, because I want to just ask a question, and it's probably aimed slightly more to the parents on the group, just this one-off question. If we flip that round, something else that a lot of women talk about with work-life balance is this guilt of being, you know, if I'm putting everything into my role, then am I being seen as neglecting my caring responsibilities? And then if I'm really focusing on my caring responsibilities, am I able to give enough to my job? And this is something that comes up in conversation with women a lot. So Caroline, I wanted your view on that. How do you think, maybe, you know, your experience in the UK, do you feel that there is an acceptance now that you might need to be fulfilled outside of your parenting role, and that we can move away from this maybe guilt that women put pressure on themselves about?
Absolutely. I think that, you know, it's going to be difficult to strike the right balance for you. And obviously, everybody's different. So the line that you draw is going to be in a different place. Some women are really maternal, others not so much necessarily. But I think that, you know, that emotional load of being a parent, and of course you want to do your best. You feel like you're on a treadmill. You feel like, you know, that you're just trying to do the best for everybody. You're spreading yourself really thinly. I worry constantly about whether I'm spending enough time with my son, whether I'm being able to meet my daughter's needs, whether I'm being good enough or performing enough at work. And it is really difficult to try and draw that balance. But I think that I have managed to get better at this as I've got older. And I was quite old really when I had kids, so it's kind of got better in probably the last 10 years. I felt terribly guilty after my first child, Harry, when I had him, and I returned to work, and I really wanted to go to work, really wanted to go back, and I wanted to go back. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to feel vital again. I kind of felt like sitting at home for me wasn't the right way of living my life. I was like Pam, I'm quite competitive, and really want to get good results, and I want to be the best that I can be, but not at the expense of other people, and especially not at the expense of my family. So having to curtail that, to slot it all in, and to try and be the best that you can be for everybody, it's a difficult one to do. And for me, that's the trickiest part of work-life balance, really. Even when I was a teacher, and obviously going back to work after having Harry, I was teaching then. People think, oh yeah, you've got it made, because you're at home during the holidays, you've got all, you're at school when they're at school, and all of this other kind of stuff. And what they don't see is all of the other hidden stuff that you do, in your own time, and the emotional load that it takes on you working with people, So,
Well, I'm going to come to Marta in a moment on that, but I just want to throw another stat out there actually that's interesting. So I talked about these number of hours, so on average men do, in the working world, men and women are doing similar hours, although men are technically getting paid still more on average because of the gender pay gap, etc. But the other statistic is that women will be doing up to 8 hours additional unpaid work because whether they're parenting or not, they are taking on more responsibility still outside of their career. So maybe they're a carer, maybe they're the one who looks after the pets, maybe they're the one that does most of the house maintenance in terms of the day-to-day stuff, So 8 hours of additional responsibility that can be loaded onto women when you look at their overall responsibilities. So it is interesting to see that the dynamics are still out there in terms of what we say yes to and what we take on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that learning how to say no is a really important skill. It's really hard, but it's essential. You've got to preserve yourself because, if you, just think about it, if you were taken away from your family, how would they cope without you? And really that's the kind of questions you need to be asking yourself, is that, if I don't carve out time for myself now, then my body will do that for me later, and it will take you away from your family, from your responsibilities, because you'll be ill. So it's important to say no, because you're safeguarding yourself, from the pitfalls that could happen down the line. Say no. That's all I can say no. And also, don't give yourself a hard time. That everybody's got a busy thing, and if you don't get the washing up done, who cares? If you don't get the clothes picked up off the floor, it doesn't really matter. If your house isn't perfect, unless your mother-in-law's coming around, who cares? It's one of those things, isn't it? I just think that we just need to give ourselves an easier ride as women, and not try and be perfect, because nothing's perfect, is it? Right? We're all imperfectly perfect, and I think that that's how we have to view the whole situation, really.
Yeah, some great points. I'm going to come to Pam in a minute, actually, on this concept of saying no, and I'm going to get her view. And apologies, panel, I know I'm flitting around the questions, but I'm just going where the conversation is taking us. But Marta, you're in Italy. We spoke before about sort of what the culture is like, in terms of supporting working women, and I don't know what the culture is like about this guilt culture that we can sometimes have. So what's your experience over in Italy?
Yeah, I feel very lucky because I work for a foreigner company, because I honestly have to say that my country is not very mother friendly, because I just read before our meeting, I just read something about the figures, which are the figures about women work in Italy. And I found out that only 6 women out of 100 find job after maternity, and 1 out of 5 has to leave. And almost 1 woman out of 5 aged between 18 and 49 years old doesn't work anymore after giving birth. It's if you think about it, it's the 800% on total of working women. So also 6,300 of women in Italy have difficulties reconciling work and family, against the 7.1% of men. So I feel,
I love some figures,
This is something that I also have a lot of friends who are mother, and they're facing these difficulties, because also when I started working in IPAF, it was 2009. And as I said before, I immediately started working from home. And it was something like have a Dolerian car, it was like the Holy Grail. And here in Italy, people started working from home only during COVID time. And a lot of companies asked people after the 2 years of period of the 2 years of COVID, asked people to come back on to the companies, and which is absolutely unbelievable, because you know that people have to resign their life and to think about timing. And if you think about working from home, you save a lot of time, because you don't have to drive to go to work, and you can save time, and you can spend these hours to stay with your kids, for example. And this is why I feel very lucky, because always, because I also have a very respectful team, because my line manager, when I have, for example, to travel, and when we have some meetings, sometimes he always asks me, are you able to organize yourself with your family, and are you able to do this with your mom? Because my mom helped me a lot, for example, because when I gave birth to my first child, my husband used to travel 9 months per year. Can you imagine it? So I have a big support, but I also have a team who is also very respectful with my time, because they don't fix dates or commitments without asking me, are you able to do this? It's okay for you? So the relationship between us is very respectful, because they also know that when I'm there, I'm there. I work 100%, absolutely. But when I can't, I can't, you know?
So again, I think it shows there's those figures are astounding. I'm off to go and do some comparison in the UK, because I love some data to have a look at, but that is astounding. And I think it shows that there is still a lot of work to be done, culturally, globally, in terms of equity, for women. So thank you for sharing that. And IPAF is looking great, by the way, with the support that they are showing. So this is great. Pam, I want to come to you about this. I spoke in my little sort of opening presentation about women, are still, I think it's getting a bit better, but we're still socially educated to please, to be the carer, to be the server, to be the one that does. And I can remember many years back, one of my female leaders, an amazing woman, and one of her top tips to me at the time, this shows how far we're going back, was when you're in a meeting with other senior managers, do not be the one who offers to make the tea, because that just puts you in that spot of you're the token female and you also make the tea. Maybe you'll take the notes as well, and it puts you in that sort of more traditional role. But we need to learn to say no, don't we? And I think with work-life balance, as Caroline touched on, sometimes it's not about what you're going to do, it's about what you're not going to do. And so share some experience and your thoughts on this concept of women being able to say no.
Well, I'm not very good at it. So I don't mind holding my hand up and saying, over the years, I've been not a yes person, but when I first started work, when I started at Instant Zipper all those years ago, Frank Hewish was the managing director, and some people will know of him. He's an ex-IPAF president. He was very dictatorial, very hard, and there was no leeway on what you could do or wanted to do or whatever. And talking about making the tea, absolutely. I think one of the first IPAF meetings was held at our offices in Shropshire, and I would make the tea for the IPAF meeting, basically. Even though there were 11, 12 other managers there, I would be the one running in and out of the room making the tea, and then they'd say, well, can you do lunch as well? So I'd be cutting sandwiches, and so that did happen. I do feel that wouldn't happen now. I just don't think it would. I might be wrong. I think maybe in a larger company, does it depend on what role you've got in your company? Do people who are 100% in the office every day are more likely to take that kind of role. I don't know, but in terms of saying no, I can put my hands in the air and say, certainly to customers, I haven't been very good at saying no. When sometimes I should have done, and it gives you a lot of extra work, and it does give you the pressure. Then you have to, it's a yes then, so then you have to find a solution. I'm better now than I used to be, and organising vertical days, which is, I can only call it an intensity, basically. You know, work-life balance with vertical days is everything happens in the 3 months up to the show, so there is no life 3 months up to the show. There's plenty of life before it, so I accept that. You know what's coming. I am with exhibitors. If they want something, I want to make it happen for them, so I say, well, let me think about it. And then others, I will very definitely say no. And you're not popular at all. I mean, it's as simple as that. People don't like you saying no to them. And
I think sometimes women in particular struggle with that. You know, I coach a lot of women, and it's almost, I don't say no, because if I say no, then this is going to be uncomfortable, or they're not going to like me, or the relationship is going to be harmed. There's this worry, isn't there, of consequence?
Yes, absolutely. I think, you know, it might be maybe younger panelists that have a different view on that, because I'm definitely more assertive now that I'm getting older, and I've got a lot of industry experience, so I don't feel like I have to keep proving myself to people, you know, by saying yes to everything. But yes, I do definitely, I can't lie, I definitely still have that weakness in me where I'd rather find a solution to something.
Caroline, let's come to you. What's your view on saying no? Are you a no person, a yes person? And how do you balance that?
Well, historically, I mean, just like Pam, I've always wanted to say yes. I mean, you want people to like you. You want to get along with people. I suppose I'm a little bit of a people pleaser in that respect. But also that's how, you know, it's about building rapport. And I've always worked in industries where building rapport is the most important skill that you've got, really, because if you don't do that, if you don't build rapport, then you haven't got the kids on side, or you know, and if they're not with you, they're against you, and that becomes very quickly very obvious, especially in a classroom situation. So but you know, saying no is important. I mean, gosh, you know, from a health and safety point of view, it's important, and like Pam, I've got better at doing that since I've got older. But yeah, it's a tough call, isn't it? I mean, I don't think really. I think when you're young, you have all these preconceptions, like you want people to like you, for example. But I think that actually saying no doesn't make them like you any less. But it does take you a while to kind of understand that whole thing. In fact, actually, it probably makes them like you more, because they think, oh, you know, that woman's got really clear defined boundaries, you know, and I know that if I push her, you know, further, then I'm going to come up against a, you know, a blockade kind of thing. But you know, I think it makes people respect you more as well by saying no. Otherwise they think you're a pushover, and they think that you can do everything, and then you end up in this state of overwhelm where you're trying to do that juggling thing rather than project management, which, you know, is a much better way of being able to tackle things.
It's very, very interesting. They're not one and the same. Saying no and being liked are not one and the same. You know, they're separate things. But Marta, I want to come to you, and I want a slightly different question, actually. So I spoke earlier about, you know, there also appears to be a lot more pressure on women generally to have the whole package, you know. So if you look at women's magazines, it's still very image related, and I know that this is actually becoming an issue for men as well. There are, you know, body issue and things like that, but for women there was still very much judged on image, and also, you know, when you're having time for yourself, that can now sometimes feel like a bit of a tick list as well. Are you doing the yoga? Are you eating the right foods? Are you doing the right activities? Are you being creative? Are you meditating? Are you doing great at your career? And so we've almost created an additional set of stuff that's meant to be healthy, that's meant to be about work-life balance, but just feels like a lot more to-do lists for us that we're not achieving. So where do you sit with this kind of whole holistic view of the pressure that women put on themselves?
It's do we have enough time to speak about it?
Yeah, you got like
it's a huge,
this much time to do this big. Yeah.
I've seen a wonderful video on Instagram with a woman running with a trolley, pushing a trolley with a big glass of wine, drinking it and pushing the trolley, running and saying, "This is my life. Try to keep hydrated, just to keep to eat well, to go to be well-being and so on." It's difficult. It's difficult, and it's not easy sometimes, because you have to manage a lot of things. You have to manage your work life, your private life. It's not easy. For example, for myself, in the last year, I put myself in the last position so many times. But this year I'm going to be 40. And this is what I thought about. And I always looked about my image, because you know that my second job is I'm a makeup artist and also an image consultant. Yeah. So this is something that helped me a lot, because when I see myself in the mirror and I see something that I like, it's something that I really enjoy, and I feel myself better. But when I think, for example, about doing yoga or Pilates, which is what I like so much before being mom, this is something that I put apart. But now I said to myself, now you have to look after yourself more. So I have to find some spare time to do this. And sometimes I can't. I don't want to feel so guilty about it. I don't want to feel sorry because I put on weight, because sometimes I can't look after what I eat. Right. I try to, this year I want also to be a little bit, how can I say, more gentle with myself, because I'm very exigent, I say. How can I say? I am very severe with myself. So sometimes I have to forgive myself because I cannot do everything.
Yeah.
But you have to find the right balance. Sometimes it's not possible because you are facing a lot of difficulties, and you are fed up of everything, or you are going to be worn out. It's okay. You have to accept it and to say, okay, next month it's going to be better. So this is something like, it's like Caroline said, a roller coaster. Yes, sometimes it's a roller coaster. Yes. And thinking about women, about the image, yes, the pressure also in my country is a lot. Even if I think, because I struggled a lot about my body weight when I was younger, because in the 90s, only the slim girls were accepted, and they were absolutely wonderful, and you have to be like them. But now I see that everything is going to change about body acceptance and so on, and I feel happier for young women, because when we are not confident and you want to feel accepted, you want to be like the other ones and to be like everybody, and just to say, I want to be the best, you know. But I see that now something is going to change, and I feel happier about it. And
I definitely think there has been, in terms of body image. You know, we work with young women through a foundation, and it's still huge, you know, and you know, social media, you know, is very visual, and portrays lots, but we are getting better at being more accepting. There is more diversity, you know, some diversity, not as much as there could be in advertising and you know, products. But it is very interesting, isn't it, that on top of everything else, what should be our downtime has become our do time. It's been like, I need to tick things off my list, and I need to achieve it. And that's how I know that I'm actually achieving. So, Caroline, what's your view on that?
Well, it's funny because my mum, when I had my son first one, she says, Caroline, you know, never underestimate looking forward to something. She says, always have something to look forward to, because it will just keep you going during those really hard times. So she said, think about doing something small every day, like even if it's just for 10 minutes, reading a book, magazine article, listening to music, a podcast, whatever it is. Then you can look forward to having that 10 minutes every day, you know. And then she says, have a larger activity, or a sort of slightly bigger activity that goes on, like maybe that you do 1 to 3 times a week. So maybe a lunch or an evening out with friends, like date night, exercise class, something like that. And then you have your largest things, so like weekends away or holidays or, you know, family time. So even if you can't make those small activities on your day-to-day basis, or even your slightly larger activities, you've always got something in the bag to look forward to. And she, you know, and she say it would propel me forward. You know, because my mum was a teacher as well. I'm 7th generation teacher from my family, so we're quite, you know, we've had a long history of education, you know, running through there. So it's work-life balance has always been an issue for us, and I grew up watching my mum come home and work at the kitchen table until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And sometimes I sit there now and I think, why did I choose to become a teacher first time when I knew exactly what it was going to be like, you know? But I think that you become so entrenched in that kind of history and the way that your family works, that you kind of start repeating those patterns from your past. And it's quite difficult to break those. So having that sort of philosophy of the small, bigger, biggest sort of things to look forward to, I think really helps, sort of keeps that overwhelm down, and just sort of helps you sort of manage things, to put things in perspective, because it's only in that time that you can really start to reflect, you know, on your life, and start to feel that richness come through. You know, and that's one of the things that kind of, when I left teaching, I found I was really shocked by, and that was the fact that my sense of self was so linked to my career for so long. I felt bereft when I left. And I thought, God, you know, this is a really difficult position to be in. You know, I felt like I didn't really know who I was. And because I just spent so long, you know, performing a particular role, you know, kids would see me in the street, and Russell would walk through, we'd go to town on Saturdays, and Russell would walk through the street and with me, and they would be going, hi miss, hi miss, hi miss. And he'd say, it's like being with someone that's famous, you know, because like all of the kids that I would teach in were obviously teenagers, so they're all hanging out in the town centre, you know, on a Saturday. So it sort of, it became a whole world, and everybody else's as well. And my kids hated it because everybody knew who I was.
So there's this concept of your work and life were very intertwined.
Absolutely.
You know, you were defined by your role.
By my role. And because I taught art and photography, and I've always been interested in art, so it was my hobby as well. I kind of pushed it to one side because of my career was so focused. So in my downtime, I just, the last thing I wanted to do was to go home and draw or paint or create something, you know. and so I struggled with it for a long time, actually. But I think actually starting to build in that time back into my life where I just focus on me, just for those small amount of times, just helps me become more creative. And that's what makes me unique. That's what makes us all unique, what helps people buy into us. You know, so seeing it from that kind of point of view is much more positive, and it kind of makes me feel sort of less selfish, carving out time for myself, and sort of disperses that guilt, you know, that I had, that I think a lot of parents.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because if you think about it's not easy to think about yourself as a person, because you think about yourself in thinking about your role. You know, you are a mother, you are a worker, and you are also a wife. But who are you as a person? And you have to look after you as a person. You know, and caring about your spare time. And for example, I carve myself my time always with my friends, because I always try to find out some time to stay with them, and just to have chatting, nice relaxing chatting, just to find energy. And this is something that I really want to save for me, and this is something really important.
Ladies, I have to kind of bring the conversation to a close. We're just a couple of minutes away, and I just wanted to say, Pam, have you got any final thoughts you want to share on work life as we bring this next Women Empowered Access webinar to an end?
We haven't spoken about how smartphones have changed everybody's work-life balance.
Absolutely.
And for me, I think that is the single most differentiator now from previously, because you are literally available on social, on email, on phone, and people know that, and I think a lot of people actually expect an immediate response.
Yes.
I have to say, sometimes at the weekend in particular, certainly if I'm doing something at the weekend, like going walking or something, I'll actually switch my phone off completely. And I think you have to do that. You have to have times when you will, because you're just accessible to everyone and everything, aren't you?
Absolutely.
I think that's negative or positive.
No, I think that's a great way to end. I think it's looking at where we are now, you know, and I'm sat here with it, you know, right beside me. So yeah, I want to say thank you to everybody. I want to say thank you to our participants. If you do want to stay involved in the chat, please join the LinkedIn group, the Women Empowered Access group, and they will add you to that. We will be sending out a recording to those, so you can listen back, and if you have any questions, there will be a way for you to forward those. So thank you so much to everybody, and we'll see you next time for our next Women Empowered Access webinar, which is looking at the generational changes and introducing, you know, work to the next generation. Thank you. Take care. Thank you, our panelists.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.